What's going on, everybody? It's Nick Kosko with On3 Sports. Special conversation with the Tournament Coach of the Year, Neil Erisman of Little Rock, Arkansas Wrestling. Coach, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. It was a banner tournament for you guys. How are you after, just a couple days after the illustrious NCAA Wrestling Championships in Kansas City?
Man, I'll tell you what, it's been a whirlwind. Watching my friends like Daniel Cormier do this on a consistent basis, I don't know how he does it. Just a lot of really good attention, a lot of good, publicity and press, and it's just been a whirlwind of emotions and just trying to catch up on some sleep in the process. So.
I can only imagine what catching up on sleep was like. I mean, you probably did not sleep after that Friday night and the Saturday medal rounds. What was that like? I mean, I know you said the travel was actually good coming back from Kansas City, but I mean, when did you actually get to sleep after that exciting Friday night?
I don't think I've slept yet. I mean, I've been pretty amped, and then I got my kids. They've been amped up about it, so they're up early and up late, and man, I'll catch up on sleep some other time. Right now, we're just going to soak it all in.
Well, obviously, you guys had a great NCAA tournament just 5 years since you took the mantle of the head coach of this program. 2 All-Americans, Nasir Bailey at 133. He took 4th, and Stephen Little took 7th at 197. First All-Americans in program history. Just talk to me about those moments and what that meant for your program, knowing that this is a program that needed some time to get built, and all of a sudden you guys are on the big stage and just making waves in this tournament that was full of a lot of surprises, of course.
Yeah, I think it means a lot for us. It means a lot for our state and our community. From where we started, 16 years ago, it was just a phenomenal feeling. Just all the people that were there to support us, and all the people back home that were texting and following in. That was an incredible feeling for them and us, and just kind of like a big boost of energy for everybody in wrestling in the state of Arkansas. And so, as a program, it's been an unbelievable moment, because it's a new standard in our program. It shows that it can be done. It's kind of like that, that record that's never been broke, that someone breaks it, and it just shows that it's doable. We're here. We're not here to compete. I've been saying that since day one. We're here to win, to be successful, and I think that really, really opened the door for a lot more guys this weekend.
When you look at guys like Bailey and Little that are going to be a part of your program moving forward, you look at the step they had to get through, or that barrier they had to break down. And of course, it came down to the blood round. Everyone knows what the blood round is. Do or die, sudden victory, even for both of your guys in both of those matches. I can only imagine. You just mentioned you didn't get any sleep. I can only imagine the potential heart palpitations you probably had during those matches. Take me back through both those moments, knowing that both those guys had to come down to, it was do or die in that round. Then, of course, it just happened to be sudden victory for both those guys.
Gosh, I mean, where do you even start? Like, you got 2 of the biggest matches of your program history on the line, and you're just looking at it, and I'll start with Nasir's. Like he was in just a kind of a scrappy match. He was kind of showing that he was going to get it done, and then was kind of in a scary spot, and then we're in overtime, and he kind of gets that takedown, but the guy kind of falls on top of him, and you're just like, you're excited, and you're like, no, wait. And the ref puts up the wrong hand for the points, and we're cheering, and then I realized that they gave the other guy 3, and then we were kind of mad, and then he switched it, and so I think that's just a good example of the roller coasters of emotions that I was kind of going through there, And then Steve, like, man, I just thought it was really, really an unfortunate call when they called hands to the face.
Mm-hmm.
If you kind of go back and watch the match, the guy's grabbing our wrist and pulling it down over his face. And so I was glad that they recognized that we were creating all the action, doing all the work. And that overtime, I just knew Steve was going to get it done. Like, that's the cool thing about our guys. Like, we've been those guys all year long.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect things to change. I didn't expect things to be different at the end. So, man, it was heart-wrenching, but then it was just unbelievably exciting.
You mentioned how you knew your guys would come through in those situations, particularly in overtime where, anything can happen, and it's the ultimate victory feeling and the ultimate disappointment if you lose in that situation. You said you've been doing it all year. What mentally prepared both those guys to get it done in that round, in overtime, in those situations?
Well, I think both of them, they want to be All-Americans. They want to be national champions. But I think they really have the freedom to go out and wrestle and be themselves. And I think that, comes from the things we focus on when we go into competition, when we go into practice. This is not, this is not truly the blood round to them. This is something that they do. This is something that's, scoring points and winning matches late and, dominating people and rolling through people. They're some of the two highest tech fall guys in the country, not just on the team. And so, scoring one more takedown is not as big of a daunting task when you've done it, repeatedly. And it's not as it's not as daunting when you think about it in the sense of like, this isn't who they are and what they stand for. This is something they work for and that they love to do. So both of them love that moment. And when you can get guys that have that freedom to compete and love that moment, special things happen.
I'm curious about the atmosphere for you now from a media standpoint, and Kansas City received rave reviews. A lot of coaches I talked to also said, this was a great atmosphere, great location for NCAAs. You're a native of the area. You talked on Wednesday ahead of the tournament, knowing that it was cool to come back home for you as well. What was that like, knowing that you came back to a familiar place, you brought your team with you, and again, you pulled off some history with your program this weekend?
Gosh, it was kind of nostalgic because my first NCAA tournament was in 2003 in Kansas City at Old Kemper Arena before they kind of chopped it up and made it something else. But man, it was like my first exposure to high level wrestling outside of some bootleg videos of Olympic trials and world team trials, right? Like it was my first real exposure. Like, holy smokes, this is what I think I want to do, and to come back and to kind of go through the struggles of just finding my way through the sport as an athlete and then as a coach and coming full circle to that moment was words can't describe how special it felt when I look up and I see my friends that I grew up with in the crowd, and I see my family there, and I see 16,000 people standing cheering for Little Rock for the first time of something that we've done. Like that moment can't be overstated. That was unbelievable.
You mentioned the trials and tribulations and figuring out what you wanted to do as a coach, as a wrestler. You go back to your Oklahoma State career, 92 wins, former Big 12 champion yourself. Did you know you wanted to be a coach right away when you were done with your competitive career? Did you have Olympic aspirations? What was that process like going from actually competing on the mat to being in the corner of those guys down in the near future?
Oh man, that's that might be a long-winded answer. I was a little bit bitter when I graduated. I missed most of my senior year with an injury, and I came back and I lost in the blood round in the round of 12. I had to have pretty good surgery, and I was just kind of bitter how my career ended. I was going back to Kansas City to work for my dad in the family business, and loading up the U-Haul, me and my wife, and coach called me up and asked me if I wanted to compete more. And, I probably let my emotions get the best of me in that moment. And I was like, absolutely not. I was kind of upset at the sport. And he's like, well, you need to stay. You need to coach with me then. And so, he talked me into coaching, and then I started to love it. And I think when I went to coach high school at Stillwater High, I think that's really where I grew to understand that I was supposed to be a coach, and that I kind of found my purpose in coaching. And just kind of getting to the point of this weekend was that all of those moments, all of those, the heartache in my high school state finals a couple times, and, losing in the blood round. And it kind of, I was able to have a drive and desire and a fire in my belly to make sure that other people accomplish their dreams. And it's pretty fulfilling to accomplish yours, but when you're right there with someone and you see the work and you see everything they put in, I don't know if I think that's probably a better feeling than your own accomplishments. And so I think it just was that moment of, man, we did it. Like, we got to a point where we're not a program. We're not just here to compete. We're here to be serious. We're here to be successful. We're here to win. And we have someone that has set the tone for our program. And all those things that happened in my past just kind of came all to that moment where, God put you in certain situations and different seasons in your life for a purpose. And I think that it was very, very helpful for me to help others accomplish their dreams.
When you help others, particularly with this squad, did you take anything away from John Smith from your time at Oklahoma State then when he said, hey, if you're not going to compete, come back on my staff and help me coach? Did you learn something immediately from him from that different perspective that you took to Stillwater High School? Obviously, you coached at North Carolina as well before you came to Little Rock. Did you just grab different experiences and ultimately learn something a little bit different than maybe you didn't see as a wrestler?
Yeah, I mean, I think every coach is a compilation of things they stole, and then they kind of add it to their personality and their character, right? And I learned so much at Oklahoma State. I learned um, John Smith's intensity is through the roof, and his ability to recognize and see things ahead of the curve, and even though he tries to warn you, you don't always see it right then. I think I really learned that from him. I really learned that having great skill wins, that being able to attack wins, but having the intensity behind that skill is what is a real game changer. And so I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from my time in Carolina with Coleman. I learned how to recruit. I learned how to be personable, to adapt to a whole different part of the world. And, I think, but, the combination of those two things are really, really what kind of brought me here for sure.
Taking all those lessons you learned, and Neil Erisman with me here on On3 Sports, you look at the challenges you had to overcome to build a brand new program. Now, again, going right into the Division I level, you're a Pac-12 program or wherever. I know you mentioned the future of the Pac-12, it's a 1-year waiver, and then whatever the future may hold at that point. But when you first took the job, it wasn't going to be you're going to have 2 All-Americans right away. You weren't going to be knocking on the door maybe of a top 10 finish or competing for national championships. What was that like that first day you walked into your office, new wrestling room, and said, okay, this is my 5-year plan, 10-year plan? How'd that go?
Well, I didn't get to walk into a new facility. I didn't get to, we had those things in place. Those things were a big reason of why I wanted to come here. I walked into a side closet at the student center that was, I joke, it was old. I used to say it was me and the cockroaches, right? And I created a 90-day plan, a 2 to 3 year plan, and a 5-year plan. And I think that process was based on looking at the scholarship opportunities, looking at the location, looking at the facility and the funding that we had and the direction we needed to go. And I created a plan that was based on good solid values and values of like, hey, here's who I am, here's what I value as a human being, and I don't want this my recruiting to be a pitch. I don't want it to be I'm selling you something that this is who I am, this is who we are, this is who we're going to be, and if you can buy in and believe that, then we'll get to where we want to be. And that was the first step in the plan. The second part of the plan was execute. Execute. And we had to go out. We had to recruit at a high level. So a lot of people had to hear our messages. You got to say yes to a lot of things. You got to, do things that most people aren't willing to do. You got to work a couple extra hours in the morning and a couple extra hours at night. And over time, that extrapolates and you pass people. And I think that's really what happened within our 5-year goals. And we've accomplished this weekend was the end of all of our 5-year goals. Mm-hmm. And we exceeded all of them. And so to me, that's a testament to the culture of the team, of the staff, and the vision that it took to get to where we want to be.
I was curious about what you actually just said there about your recruiting tactics and how you don't want to make it a sales pitch and you're just executing. What do you actually mean by that?
Yeah. So one thing that I studied a lot about in leadership, I got a box underneath my desk that is just stacks and stacks full of just different leaders of all types, from CEOs to coaches. I wanted to be real versus right. I didn't want to try to say the right thing. I wanted to be real about who I was. And so I said, look, I'm going to walk into this program and we're going to plant our flag on the ground and we're going to wrestle for something bigger than ourselves and keep our eyes on the prize and run the race in a way that is purposeful and meaningful. And, what are the values that we're going to have along the way. And I wanted my wrestlers to live and wrestle for something bigger than themselves because I'm coaching for something bigger than myself. I wanted them to control the things they can control, their attitude, their effort, their accountability, because I know those are things that I struggle with and I want, and that I have to focus on. And those are things that help me. And then I knew it was going to take building great relationships to have an opportunity to do anything from fundraising to recruiting to winning on the mat. You got to have strong relationships. So having relationships is kind of the third piece of that factor. And if we focus on those things every single day, living for something bigger, controlling the things you can control, having great relationships, good things come out of that, and winning and standards happen. They become a byproduct of who we are and what we're doing. And so that's really where the genesis of that came about. And we just kind of grew from there.
When you build those relationships, again, you have a young program, so I can only imagine the alumni network is not as big as you envision down the line. How do you start to build something like that with maybe it starts with your outgoing wrestlers at this point from the program? Are there other alumni in the athletic department that you reach out to say, hey, this is what we're building here. Help us help you, and vice versa? How do you do something like that with now maybe a growing alumni network out of Little Rock?
Yeah, so I think the first thing you do is, I kind of alluded to it earlier. You say yes to a lot of things. Like, I'm in the Rotary Club. I go to the Touchdown Club. You're like, why are you going to a Touchdown Club? Well, that's because everybody who cares about athletics in Arkansas is part of the Touchdown Club. You do a lot of community service. You do, I support the youth organization by not just donating, but donating my time, and my guys ref on the weekends that we don't have competitions. And, we're doing clinics, we're doing camps, my coaches are calling every high school coach, inviting them to camp and building that relationship and that rapport that way. And that's really how you get to where you want to be, is you got to just kind of continue to just reiterate the same message over and over, and show up. I think the worst thing that people don't do is show up. They're there, they're present, but they don't show up and actually give back and get involved. They expect, because they're a college coach, that people are supposed to come to them. And I think I learned a lot of that from, Greg Hatcher, who was the person who made our program happen. I mean, his is the Hatcher Agency, the home of outrageous service. And if he's got to drive over and pick up your premium check, he'll do it, so you don't have to mess with it. If he's got to go sit down with you at your computer and help you enroll in your insurance, like, he's going to do it. And I think that approach and his mentality really sunk into what we wanted to do, and it helped us put a lot of roots in the community really quick.
So as you build this program, it's funny because you mentioned you're reaching out to all the high school coaches in the area, trying to build your brand of a wrestling program at this school. When people think of Arkansas, especially at our company, they're thinking, oh, it's Razorback football. It's all about Razorback football, and more SEC football. I can only imagine what it's like to have Arkansas wrestling. What is that like for you as a coach in a program, saying, hey, I know it's the football dominated state, but the wrestling scene is actually growing here?
I mean, when you talk about when I got here, I think my oldest son participated in the youth state tournament. I think there were like 450 athletes from basically junior high level all the way down to 6 and under, right? I think that the reason that we have grown is because, we have wrestling at every level in Arkansas, but it's because people like me and a couple other coaches have gotten out there and really, really shared our message of what we're doing. I mean, we got high school coaches that work tirelessly, that have 90 kids on a high school program, and then they're running kids clubs and they're doing those things. And I think that, that growth plus women's wrestling has shot us up. I think we had 1,250-ish entries in the state tournament this year for youth, and we've had to move to a bigger venue. And I think that being dominated by SEC football, I think it's just a compliment. Like, we don't fight that. We embrace it. We're like, yeah, that's great. But, the center for the Chiefs played, was a Oklahoma State champion, and so on and so forth. Like, we don't fight the battle of Razorback football. We embrace it. We cheer them on, and we tell them wrestling can help you do this. And it's just a constant reiteration of our message across the state.
Couple more for you, Coach. I'm looking at your season as a whole. You did really well in the Pac-12 tournament. Everyone's going to remember the NCAA tournament performance, of course, with the first 2 All-Americans and you winning tournament coach of the year. Besides, I guess, the individual postseason, were there any individual moments, either from a specific wrestler, as a team, that really, what moments really stood out this year that made it so special that you basically knew that something special could be happening in March?
Yeah, I think there was kind of 3 moments. Our first tournament, we were at the Tiger Style, and I had a couple guys beat some ranked guys. Getting when you're starting brand new, getting ranked wins is a really hard thing to do because coming from Oklahoma State, like, that's what you were supposed to do. That was the standard, and we hadn't met that standard yet. I think we had like 1 or 2 ranked wins in our last 5 years, and now we're starting off our season, and we got 2 guys, winning the tournament, and beating ranked guys, beating good guys. I mean, Stephen Little beat an absolute stud, from Maryland, and so I think that was moment number 1. Moment number 2, and I don't want to beat up on these guys. I've said this a couple times in interviews, but we were at Drexel and Clarion, and we went out and we wrestled lights out, and it wasn't like we just all clicked on the same day. We had a lot of tough matches, a lot of hard situations that we blew through, and we scored a lot of points. And I remember walking back in the locker room after we wrestled both those teams, and I looked at Coach Javi and I was like, we're different. Like, I don't know what it is, but we have never beat a team that's that seasoned, that has that much history, and beat them like that. And that was a moment where I was like, we might have a shot. Right. And then I think Arizona State's really the huge turning point for our program.
Right.
Going out, we knew we could win that match, but we've been feeling that for, we felt it last year, and our first year we were up 9-6 going into to 165. And it just seems like the wheels always fell off. And the reality was we hit 157 this year, and we sped up, and we found a way to get it done. And I think beating a ranked team and beating a team as prestigious as Arizona State was a great moment for our program and a huge turning point. And then the guys just believed, and we caught a little fire, and it was something that was always there. We just needed a spark. So I think those are the 3 biggest moments, outside of Pac-12 and in the NCAA tournament.
So looking forward, and this is not putting you on the spot, but now, of course, with 2 All-Americans, you have all the success. The eyeballs are now on the program. This is a program that is not to be trifled with, and it's not one of those where, like, oh, well, they're building, they'll eventually be something. You are something now. You mentioned your 5-year plan when you first became head coach. What's next? Is there a new 5-year plan? Is it now just year to year, and knowing that 2 All-Americans, is that now the new standard? Is it national championships? What does the plan look like now, knowing that you accomplished all this here in 2024?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. It's something that my coaches and I have talked about, and that we're going to sit down and really hash out. But my first thoughts are, we got to have a national champ. Having a national champ is super important. It's the highest standard of our collegiate sport here, outside of the World Championships and Olympics. There's really nothing bigger than being an NCAA champion, and there's nothing harder. And I think we got 2 guys that right now show that they can do that. I think we got to, look at as a whole. We got to start, putting more guys in the tournament, putting more guys in positions to be successful on the mat. With the ever-changing landscape, we have to put things in perspective there financially, of where we're going to raise money and put money, and how we're going to protect ourselves against the future of conference changes and NIL, and heaven forbid another COVID situation. We got to prepare for that, and then we got to start making some more big splashes in recruiting. We've had back-to-back, top 15, top 20 recruiting classes, but we got to do that on a yearly basis. We should be bringing in 5 or 6 top 100, top 150 recruits on a yearly basis if we want to jump to that next level. So there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to that I could talk about in that sense, but we definitely have another 5-year plan, and I think it starts with this first 90 days, and then it starts with 2 years, 3 years, and then all the way to 5.
I'd actually be remiss, Coach, if I didn't ask you about, you just mentioned the conference realignment, and slipped my mind. I know you said there's a 1-year waiver. Do you have any idea of what is in store for Little Rock and the rest of the Pac-12 teams? Whether, what do you necessarily envision in terms of where your conference affiliation lies in a couple of years, or is that something that's for another day?
Well, I don't want to give you the coach answer, but I'm going to have to, because it changes so much so
Right.
rapidly that I could give you an answer today and it's going to be different tomorrow. I think that the first thing we want to do is try to protect wrestling in the West at all costs. We don't want to isolate a few of those teams out there and leave them on an island with no potential regional partnerships with other teams in the conference. I think I think wrestling coaches are very short-sighted and they only think about themselves. And I think that's part of the problem in our sport. So we're going to do what's best for the conference. And then second, we're going to do what's best for us. If it comes down to it, we're going to do what it takes to be in the best possible conference, to put guys into the NCAA tournament, to put them in position to have a great schedule, great RPI, great winning percentage, and get in the coaches poll, right? Because that's what it takes to go to the NCAA tournament. So I don't know the answer. I don't think we'll know the answer until more dominoes fall. But we need to be ready. We need to be ready to pivot and have our ducks in a row so that we can jump on whatever train we need to jump on.
Little Rock head coach Neil Erisman. Coach, really appreciate the time. Great stuff. Congratulations on all the success in 2024. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys have planned out. As you mentioned, your next 5-year plan and what it's going to look like when we actually get closer, believe it or not, to 2030. But appreciate your time, my man.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate you. Thanks for thinking of us, and love to be back anytime.